Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. This week Airfix announced their 2023 releases, so let's have a look at those, the good, the bad and the ugly of it. First off, if you've not seen that announcement or video, the Airfix video is linked down in the description of the video below. But I've deconstructed it a little since they seem to hop about a little bit between what's new and what's not. Now, I won't be covering the quick build kits since they're not really scale model kits in true sense, and I'm going to be going from new tools to old re-releases in order of decreasing scale. So we start off with bigger stuff first in each category. So first, new tools. First up is the Ferret Scout Car Mark II. Now this is a new tool, doesn't have box art, there are no mention of a number of parts, so it's probably going to be a release later in the year. This is a Cold War British scout car. I can see it being used in sort of Cold War dioramas and things. Not something that personally interests me, but probably exciting for a number of you out there. The second 35th scale release is a British Army World War II truck. This may not be very exciting, but I can see this being used in a lot of dioramas. So this is a very ubiquitous general use truck. It does have a part count, 174 parts. So this is probably going to be an earlier release, I would say, than the Ferret Scout car, and one that World War II armour modelers will probably look at and, depending on price point, pick up for dioramas. We then have 4 new releases, all based on the 1/43rd scale range of cars that Airfix have been doing. The McLaren 765LT, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo, the Aston Martin DB5 and the Land Rover Series 1. Now personally for me, certainly the first 2 modern cars don't really interest me, but I know there are a lot of car modelers out there who may like this. The Aston Martin DB5 looks nice, and I wonder, with the DB5 being so famous from James Bond, whether there'll be a James Bond version in the offing in the future. The Land Rover Series 1 as well, I can see being used in dioramas, post-war dioramas, as a very ubiquitous vehicle from when it was created to the present day. So there's some use there. 43rd scale is a bit of an odd scale for the rest of us, if you're not just a car modeler. It's a little bit different from 48 scale. You can probably get away with it. So again, are you going to use it with aircraft? You could do. Probably not a focal point. You're probably not going to notice the difference that much. The box arts for all of the cars, so expect all of those going to be relatively soon. So speaking of 48 scale, then we move on to the Fairy Gannet. Probably the biggest kit of this announcement in terms of the both size and probably what people are hoping for. This is the AS1 AS4. This is both good and ugly because the Gannet was not a pretty aircraft. The initial renders look really quite nice. It's got a full cockpit, full bomb bay, weapons, plus it has the Z folding wings. So that looks great, but the Gannet is one of the ugliest aircraft I think ever made. From a personal point of view, I'm sure the people that love it. Now these are only renders, there's no box art, nothing in the background on the video, so I expect this is probably going to be a late year release compared to some of the other things here. Moving to 72nd scale, we have an F-35B Lightning II. We do have a part count, 42 parts, and they plan to release this in 3 different formats, at least initially. I'm sure there'll be more down the line. One is tying in with the 80th anniversary of the Dambuster raids to go with the Avro Lancaster. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. The second format is going to be with the Spitfire Mark V, the 5C, and then obviously as a standalone kit as well. The Lightning itself is going to be a new tool. Now, there were box art mock-ups, at least the art for the boxes, for the 2 gift sets, but not for the standalone, so I imagine they'll probably be doing it in those kind of releases. And probably tie in again with the Dambuster raid anniversaries, and then the new tool by itself later on. So that's all for new toolings. Then we look at kits which have new parts in them as well. And the first of those is a classic, 32nd scale. This is the Bond Bug. Now, this is a kit that hasn't been available since 1975. I'm sure many of you probably weren't even alive when this kit went missing. The tools apparently were thought to be missing, but obviously Airfix found them somewhere. And what they've done is reverse engineered the transparencies in the kits. There's actually a new tooling for the transparencies here. So This is going to be one that I suppose all those people that have held on to those kits that they've got of the Bond Bug, hoping for huge prices on eBay, are going to be very disappointed with this release, because it's going to make it widely available. I expect a lot of people will jump on this for the nostalgia, and also because it's slightly new because of the transparencies. I have no idea what the tooling will be like. It's a 1971 kit, I believe. But then if the tooling has been used for that time, it could be in pretty good shape. So we'll have to see. Next up is the 1/48 scale Buccaneer. This is the S2B. So this is last year's release, but with some new parts for the S2B version. So that's obviously modern tooling, just extends out from last year's release. And then 48 scale Hawker Hunter. So this is the FGA9, the FR10, the GA11. So what Airfix have said here is they've added new parts for these versions and also corrected the base tool to produce a really accurate Hawker Hunter. They do have very nice box art of the incident where an IF pilot flew his Hawker Hunter through the span of Tower Bridge, basically as a protest. That's really nice. It's really nice to see Airfix, go back and reiterate their tooling. So that's nice to see. We don't have the de Havilland Vampire FB5 FB9, so this is not new per se, but it is a combination of sprues from other releases to create the FB5 FB9 version. We then move to 72nd scale. We have the PR16 Mosquito. This is based on the 2021 kit. And the Hawker Tempest, which again was last year's release, new parts and new decals to make it a post-war iteration. Much like the de Havilland Vampire 48 scale, the 72nd scale Phantom FG1 FGR2 is a combination of sprues from prior releases to make that particular kit. And then we have the 72nd Buccaneer S2B, much like the 48 scale, with a new Operation Desert Storm scheme and weapons to go along with that. And then the last that gets some new parts is a classic release, the Auster Antarctic. And again, Airfix have re-engineered the transparencies in that kit to actually give you some new transparencies. Although, with the older kits, you may not want to see what's inside because there generally wasn't a lot, so we'll have to see how that looks as well. We then have a whole bunch of kits which are re-liveried, so new decals, new paint schemes. So 48 scale, we have the de Havilland Tiger Moth, the Sea Fury, and the Gloucester Meteor F8. So all of those prior kits, no changes to the kits apart from the decals. And in 72nd scale, we have a whole bunch. P51D, Zero, Spitfire Mark 5C, the ME110E Tropical, the ME262 A1A/2A, the Harrier GR1 AV8A, B25 C/D Mitchell, Vickers Wellington Mark 1A/C, and the Avro Lancaster Special Dambuster version is also going to be available separately with new decals and options, including Guy Gibson's aircraft. So some really nice paint schemes in all of those actually. The Vickers Wellington has a captured German version, for instance. The Mitchell has a Lend-Lease Russian version. So worth checking out if you haven't already done those kits, or you've done them, liked them, and want a different type of kit. We also then have some reintroductions, so no changes, just reintroductions. The more recent kits, we've got the Fallen Nat T1. I've actually done this recently, an upcoming video that comparing different paint finishes of the starter set, but this is just the Fallen Nat T1 release. And then in the Classics range, we have a number. Now, some of these make sense and some of them I'm not quite sure where Airfix are coming from. The largest and first of them is the Stuka, the B model Stuka. Now, I remember getting this as a Christmas present from my father once, and we did the kit together. We took a long time over it, and I loved it. It was really detailed for the time. But that's going to be about £100. It's going to be about the same as the 124th Spitfire they've just released. But this is not changed. This is a classic release. And you do have other options here. Trumpeter released the Stuka B2, I think, and it's £130. But that includes, all of Trumpeter's modern toolings. So it's got a full cockpit, it's got a full engine. So I think they're playing on the nostalgia card there, and I'm not really sure that's going to work. But still, that's the first of their releases. I would say that's a bit of a miss for me. Then we have the Brewster Buffalo, a funny, chubby little plane. Then another first, they're re-releasing one of their dogfight doubles, one of the earlier ones, the Fokker DR1 and Bristol F2B, the Brisfit. The quality of those kits, I've done the Bristol Fighter in the past. It's okay. It's not a modern kit. I remember doing the Fokker DR1 sometime in my childhood, and I remember it being a nightmare. Tiny little kit. So, again, if that floats your boat, I guess it depends on pricing. I can't imagine they're going to be super cheap. One that may interest people, the Fairy Rotodyne. Now, the Rotodyne, I think Airfix is the only choice in 72nd scale. I think there are some 144 scale and maybe some larger ones as well. But the Fairy Rotodyne was a project, it was an experiment, and Airfix are the only ones that make an injection molded tooling of it. So if you've missed it in the past and don't want to pay sort of exclusive prices for second-hand, collector's kits and all this, that could be an option. Another one is the 176 Bloodhound missile, which is actually something I was thinking about when I was doing my Lightning kit and doing some research on the missiles it carried. The Bloodhound missiles like it were kind of what saw the death toll of interceptors like the Lightning, is that these missiles were seen as replacing that. The Bloodhound missile includes a Land Rover and figures. Certainly, I think I'll probably pick that up, again, for nostalgia reasons. The Bloodhound's are an interesting missile. So I think that one's, one that I'll probably pick up. And again, I don't know, I haven't looked, but I don't know of any other releases of that. And then finally, the smallest kit here is the 180th scale Great Western, Brunel's steam cruiser. Did a transatlantic thing. It includes the original vac form sails, having got the Cutty Sark as one of the oldie little starter kit things. These are pretty horrible, and I don't know, unless they've changed something about those mouldings, I wouldn't recommend that. I think that is probably the big boo-boo in all of these releases that I would tell people to avoid. Unless you've got a specific interest in that particular kit, even. Not one I could recommend. But that is the shape of Airfix's releases for 2023. Some interesting stuff in there. I'll be interested to see how their pricing looks on the F-35B. There are a lot of F-35B kits out there. Interesting to see Airfix's take on it. Some of these other kits that I haven't picked up. I haven't picked up their ME-110. I think the GR1 Harrier could be interesting, as I haven't picked that up, and it's got some new interesting. The AV-8, the US temporary winter camouflage one, looks really quite cool. And then some of these releases with new parts. The Bond Bug, I'll probably pick up because just interest is very unique, I suppose. The 48 scale Vampire and the Hunter might be of interest. So there's a lot to look at there. It's not, I would say, an amazing wow kind of set of releases, but I think it's a pretty solid set. We'll have to see how they look when they start bringing them out and what kind of schedule they have. That's all for this instalment of Man's Model Moments. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel for more like it, and share this video with others you think would also enjoy it. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and if you're feeling generous, then I also have a Patreon, which is absolutely the best way of helping me to grow the channel and produce more content like this. With that, I hope you have plenty of modelling moments of your own, and I look forward to welcoming you on the next video.